If you love everything football, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Beyond the Touchline, a Football Manager Central podcast with your hosts, Paul, Ryan, and Colin.
Good evening. I hope everyone is well. We are here for the final episode of Beyond the Touchline before 2016. The question: how many times will you write 2015 on a piece of paper when you date something after the turn of the year? Let's ask our guest, Mr. Second Yellow Card.
Hello. The answer is never, because I literally don't write anything.
Brilliant. You had to ruin it, didn't you?
No,
just make something up.
The last time I wrote something was like a Christmas card, and that was like the first time I'd written anything in like 3 months. I just don't write things. If I can type it, I will.
Must have got lost in the post because it's still not come. The question is, we don't call you Mr. Second Yellow Card because this is not a football manager podcast. It's a football podcast.
Exactly.
And the question is, how many times... Here we are then. Scrap the start. How many times will you mention something from FM and think it actually happened in real life during this show?
Never, because I have a firm grasp on reality.
I've done it a couple of times and no one's clicked on. I was listening back to a show the other day and went, yep, that's happened in FM and not in real life. Good evening, Colin.
How's it going?
It's going well. People might notice the silence, the fact that Ryan is not with us, the buzzing of his microphone in the background. He has left university to go back to his mother's for Christmas, and I basically refuse to have him on because she does not shut up. You think it's a joke, Matt? It's actually the real answer.
Oh, I can believe you. I've never met his mother, and I won't want to slight on her character.
I'll just do it. No, I'm joking. She's a nice lady. She just likes to talk. But yeah, we're 2 minutes in. Let's mention the first bit of football, which actually broke just before we came on, which worked out quite well. Fulham, who coincidentally Matt supports, unfortunately, we can say.
I'm suffering.
They have a new head coach.
Another one.
Another one to add to the list.
You know you've reached a fantastic level when 2 Newcastle fans are giving a Fulham fan crap.
Exactly. The times have certainly changed.
Well, I think by far the best thing about this was before we come on, I said, "Oh, they've got a new head coach. We can definitely mention this." And you kind of ummed and ahed, and I said, "Yeah, but he did well at Watford." And what was your response? They had 5 that season.
Yeah, I think what I actually said was that it was a bit like they were playing like Pass the Parcel, and he just happened to be the one that the music stopped on.
But I mean, in all honesty, how do you see it going? The question is, didn't he go somewhere? Was it Spain or somewhere he went to manage in?
No, we're bringing him in from Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel.
Well, I knew he went somewhere.
It's near Spain.
Spain, Israel, it's all in Europe.
They've got some of the same letters.
A little bit. Yeah, they are based in the world.
They are definitely based in the world. No space teams here.
Now, he's coming just before the transfer window, which would have been a good thing if you weren't under an embargo.
Indeed, which I still don't fully understand, but that's nothing to do with managers. That is down to the catastrophic mismanagement from our board and CEO.
Now, I thought the transfer embargo... Now, bear in mind, my knowledge on it's quite limited, so... Well, clearly I'm wrong. I thought it was when you spend too much. So how the hell did Fulham get in it?
Because we have spent a lot of money. Do you remember how much we spent on Ross McCormack?
Well, I remember how much it was reported, but I actually listened to a podcast last week with a Fulham fan on, and he said they've only actually paid about 4 million of it because most of it was in if you get promoted and stuff.
Exactly. I think that was often blown out of proportion, but I believe that we've still violated FFP protocol, and as a result of that, it's landed us in the doghouse, so to speak. And I really don't know how we could let ourselves get into this state, considering we're backed to the hilt by one of the richest men in the world.
Backed by one of the richest men in the world, can't spend any money.
Exactly. It's basically having a gun with no bullets.
So, I mean, how's the season going for you? Since you were last on, have you calmed down anymore in terms of Fulham, or are they still like a yo-yo?
Since I've last come on this show, we've not won a football match. We're winless in 8 matches now. We've not won a game since we sacked Kit Simons.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. We've been in free fall, and we're only... I mean, admittedly, fair enough. Okay, at the weekend, or whatever... Yeah, it was the weekend. We lost 2-0 at Derby. Derby, fine. one of the best sides in the league. That's understandable. But a couple of weeks previous, we'd failed to win against Bolton, a team who'd only won one match all season, and who Neil Lennon is under huge pressure because, of course, Bolton are in a horrible financial situation. I think that's something like £60 million in debt, aren't they?
Am I right to say that Heskey scored against you?
I don't know if he did or not, but that would not in any way come as a surprise to me.
I know he scored in some game where Bolton won, and I assume they haven't won many games.
Well, they didn't beat Fulham. But we only drew 2-2. But the point is we managed to not beat Bolton. They've won one game all season.
Poor Bolton. They're as bad in real life as they are in Football Manager.
They actually are. Bolton always go down. And then again.
Yeah, they're playing Colin at the minute in the conference.
Seriously?
Not anymore. I've moved past him.
Oh yeah, Colin, don't take the piss. Poor Fulham.
Poor Bolton.
Sorry, poor Fulham. Poor Bolton.
We're not that bad yet.
I had a long way to go before we find Fulham.
Not in real life.
But I mean, I've noticed how bad Football Manager is in realism because Tim Sherwood's manager of a League 2 side on my save.
You're right, he'd never get a job in League 2.
Exactly, West. It's just not the Sherwood way to go to League 2. It is Blackburn, however.
That and no team in League 2 would ever give him a job.
Poor Sherwood. They wouldn't, but Chelsea or someone would.
Can you imagine Sherwood at Chelsea?
You can imagine him just on the touchline going, yep, nailed it.
And then if they didn't win, he'd throw his gilet on the floor and stamp off like a toddler.
Well, it fit in well, him and Costa.
Oh, Christ.
But, well, we might as well stay on Chelsea. Well, I don't really want to stay on them, but we'll keep talking about Chelsea. So Gus Hidding's gone in. It appears the players have now learned how to kick a football. You can imagine Mourinho watched that game. I mean, well, let's be honest, it was Sunderland, and as we've said on previous shows, me and Colin, and just the two of us could beat Sunderland. But Chelsea got the victory, 3-1. Costa scored some goals. He actually got in the box. Match of the Day did the thing where they bring up the stats and they go, oh look, he run more than anybody else. I was quite surprised by that, to be honest. I don't know where he was running for most of it, but
probably follow the referee around, and if you match his track, then you're going to find Diego Costa probably just giving him crap.
I was thinking because it said he had the most sprints in the game, and one of my first thoughts was, I wonder how many of them were towards the referee.
It's a long way between the box and the lineman to yell at him.
So, hey, he still managed to get top of the stats. So good job, you aggressive, useless waste of space. But Mr. Yellow, Mr. Card, Matt, we can call you on a non-FM show. I mean, what's your thoughts on clubs like Chelsea when this happens, when you have players who clearly have talent, but seem to not be asked to use it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think with the Chelsea situation, it seems like a very unique situation. I can't remember another situation with a club, particularly of the size of Chelsea, being in this kind of thing. And obviously, yeah, the Sunderland game, they won and people thought it was brilliant again. And I think that sort of said something about the players in a way, though, in that clearly they could have won games under Mourinho. And perhaps, I don't see it as all being down to Mourinho in that sense, because clearly they were just not trying very hard. Because I feel like if Mourinho was still in charge, they probably would have just not tried and Sunderland would have beaten them. Sunderland have beaten Chelsea before at Stamford Bridge. But I think, they drew 2-2 with Watford, and Gus Hiddink after the game came out and said that it was a good result. Now, nothing to me says more about Chelsea's psyche this season than thinking a 2-2 draw against Watford at home is a good result.
Yeah, but just remember, though, that they have been playing really, really bad recently, so maybe they just kind of went, hey, get up, we got a point. And then you have Gus Hiddink, who's been around the world doing shit since he was last at Chelsea. So actually getting a point is an achievement for him after what he did with Holland.
I guess. I just think that, if they could
maybe he was just impressed that he got a point.
Just like, well, how did that happen?
But in all seriousness, one thing that they did show, and it was apparent, was that Costa was getting in the box more, which is for the whole season where they've been screaming. So there's the question, I suppose, when you look at the likes of United and how Van Gaal has basically chained, he's padlocked some of the players. Did Mourinho have Costa dropping deep, pulling wide on purpose, or was he genuinely just being a knob? Colin, I mean, that's where you've got to ask yourself.
So I'm a bit with Matt. I think the situation is more complicated. So I think if you look at what was going on with Chelsea, I think yes, Mourinho was pushing on Costa to drop deeper, but I think it's largely because you had guys like Hazard who were just lazy and refused to do anything. So I think he was trying to compensate for what other guys were doing by pushing around to have players do things that they don't really do well. So I think the dynamic is very different in this case. I don't think it was I think there were a lot of players that just stopped, that they just gave up. They waved a white flag and said, "Screw it, I'm done. I don't care." And you watched a manager try to tactically compensate for it in ways that you couldn't compensate for it.
Well, I mean, we've discussed so many times, and I'd actually like to ask you, Matt, on your thoughts on it. When you look at last season to this season, and the fact that you had the likes of Matic, who just constantly... Oh, I can hear myself. Who could just constantly just seem to run forward. Last season, he was the rock in front of the defence. He was protecting them legs of John Terry, where this season he seemed to think he was the Hazard of the defensive midfield.
Yeah, I think Matic, as you say, last season, he was like the gatekeeper. Like, you had to pay the toll to the troll before you could get under the bridge. And he was the troll, and generally he didn't let anyone pass, basically, and that's why I think he was, like you say, he was the rock at the heart of Chelsea's midfield and the defence in a way. He sort of bridged that gap, and I don't know what it is. Chelsea's tactics do seem different this year. And from the very beginning of the season, it was like Mourinho looked at last season, did some analysis on it, and said, right, these are some ways that we can improve and be more solid this year. And almost like that then kind of backfired. And once that kind of backfired, the players lost confidence in him. But because Mourinho is a very sort of stubborn, and I guess you could say he's probably pig-headed, and that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes that gets sometimes if people won't listen, even though he's in the right, he could still get them to do it. But I think after a while, they probably just lost faith, and as a result, they stopped listening because they just see that they don't see an end in sight, and they feel like if we don't get rid of him, we're never going to get a chance to play properly or whatever, and this season could go to crap. And moreover than that, most of those Chelsea players, I imagine some of them probably still have, I know this sounds ridiculous, but some of them probably still have aspirations of playing for, and I quote this, bigger clubs. And I don't mean that the Chelsea aren't a big club. I just mean that if you can't be telling me that if Eden Hazard wasn't given the chance to move to Real Madrid, that he wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's true. And anyone who's obviously angry at Matt's comment about bigger clubs, just contact him on Twitter at @FM_Yank. Remember to follow. But what I will say is, I forgot all about Chelsea playing Watford, hence why I brought the Sunderland game up. So good job, me. Pat on the back. But yeah, the Watford game, it was strange because I think Watford could have won it, but Chelsea fought back. Did they fight back because of a new manager in charge? You would hope so, but then you would kind of hope they'd have done it before then.
I wanted to make a jump. So we talked about tactically things going a little wonky at Chelsea. I think the Everton is a great example of something that's gone sort of just sideways. Right, so if you look at statistically this season, Everton have absolutely dominated the hell out of games. And I think going into the Newcastle game, they had the same number of wins in the season as Newcastle, if I remember correctly.
That's quite embarrassing if they did.
Yeah, they do, but it's, so I guess the question is right, so it's almost the opposite of Man United, right? Martinez has put in this style, and they play this attractive, wonderful to watch, passing, possession-oriented, fluid game, and they can't score a goal to save their lives. Now, okay, so they beat Newcastle over the weekend, but yeehaw. It's not like it's an effort some days. And besides, we came off a win, so it was time to lose.
It's true.
But so I guess it's almost the exact opposite side of the coin to me, where you run into this thing where they now have such an identity, and it's so bad, but they can't seem to get away from it.
I mean, when you were talking about Everton there, and I mean, when you look at the stats from the Newcastle game, they had 88% pass completion. I think in a Premier League game with the pace and the intensity of a Premier League game, to have 88% pass completion is just unbelievable. It's fantastic. I mean, they dominated, and I mean, well,
They had 60% of the ball, 88% pass completion, 20 shots, 7 shots on target, and they put one in the back of the net against Newcastle.
I would be very interested to see where those passes actually took place, because as you say, 88% pass completion is incredibly good. However, if 90% of those passes that you're completing are in your own half because you're playing it around the back four constantly, that could be skewing the stats quite a fair bit, because from what you can actually look at, if you scroll down and look at the key passing stat, Everton weren't stupidly better than Newcastle when it comes to actual key passes. 13-7 is certainly not a vast difference being made, and I do wonder if maybe some of their play was a little bit too ponderous at times, and there's a lot of probing, similar to the way that Arsenal used to play. They're less so nowadays, but they were certainly accused of being a little bit too ponderous and trying to walk the ball into the net at times, and I think that might be perhaps why Everton just didn't create that many solid opportunities against Newcastle. I still think they should have won the game, because they did have some good chances, but I just, and obviously they did win the game, but I feel like in these sort of games, with that amount of sort of control of the game, they should be putting the game to bed 2 or 3-0.
Right.
I mean, Newcastle are not exactly a team to brag about beating at them, and we're so bad it's ridiculous. I mean, to lose the game with the last kick of the game or last header of the game, it's just depressing. I mean, we're sitting in 18th, joint with Norwich, which hopefully we can overtake them, so at least I can laugh at Jay from our admin team, just to give us some sort of happiness. I mean, the one good thing is I noticed Sunderland are like 5 points behind us now on 12 points, so hopefully they're going to go down. Sick of seeing that crap in the Premier League. But going on to some more crap, and it was Manchester United losing to Stoke. Now, obviously, there's rumours Van Gaal's leaving. He walked out of the press conference, which was very amusing to watch. He sat down and asked for an apology. He has no idea what he's dealing with. I mean, let's be honest, that press conference showed how clueless he is. And anyone who listens to this podcast from outside of England, if you don't know, the English press will eat you alive at the first opportunity. And he asked and complained for an apology, and he got one in the newspaper the next day, and it was basically a full page of, I'm sorry that you have not won in 5, for example. I'm sorry that you are shocking. I'm sorry that you are crap, basically. And Van Gaal is slowly destroying Man United. They look so scared to play football. When they attack, they look back as if they're looking for permission to move. Stoke, all they had to do was move because United seem to be stuck in certain positions. They seem scared to follow men. They were literally just stand there, and if you run off them, they just hope someone else is picking that zone up, which it appears nobody is.
The first Stoke goal was one of those things where the next time I see somebody in Football Manager go, well, that crap doesn't happen, that's the highlight I'm going to put in. The Depay Superman back header to De Gea there. That's one of those ones where you sit him down in front of his locker after the game and go, you're going to need to explain what the hell went through your head, because I got nothing on that one. But I think the second one was exactly sort of in that same thing. But it was again it was a ricochet shot that came off a set piece, and okay, so it was a beautiful shot into the back, into the net, but nobody from United moved. They all just stood there and watched, and it was like watching 8th grade rec league where they're sitting around going, "Ooh, the ball, flowers."
Oh, flowers. It was just, it's so dreadful. But one thing I wanted to ask is, you have Man City, you have Chelsea, Man United, all seem to be fighting over Guardiola. You have Pellegrini somehow now linked to Chelsea. I mean, that guy couldn't tactically organise a freaking sandwich. He would end up buttering the outside of his bread. He doesn't understand. He's just. This guy's clueless. I genuinely don't understand how he's a Premier League manager. But Matt, I wanted to go to you and just ask. You've got players like Martinez, who, as you said, maybe is playing a bit too at the back possession-wise, but he's playing decent football. You've got Eddie Howe, a young manager. Why aren't these managers getting linked with these jobs?
I think that we're in a day and age now where those managers aren't going to be linked with those jobs. I think that there seems to be like a sort of totem pole that you've got to sort of climb your way up, where the league seems to be separated into tiers within the division. So you've got sort of like the bottom area of clubs, those clubs that wouldn't be out of place in the championship and are kind of neither here nor there. And if a manager loses his job at one of those clubs, he can only really go down. But then if he does well, he'll move to a sort of a mid-table club, a team that would have been someone like a Swansea or a Stoke or an Aston Villa. But then if you did well at one of those sort of clubs, you'd move potentially up to someone like a Spurs or a Liverpool or someone like that. And then, of course, if you did well there, you'd move up to... That seems to be the way that you get these jobs if you're a young English manager or a manager in this country in general that hasn't proven himself on the world stage, so to speak. It seems to be that that's how it's done. They're looking for... the way I look at it is like this. If you are... Look at this from a sort of purely cynical point of view, from a just sort of cold, hard facts point of view. If you're the board at Manchester City, who would you think you'd trust in terms of... who do you think is going to deliver you a Premier League title? Do you think Eddie Howe is going to do that, or do you think Pep Guardiola is going to do that? And I think that that's the problem. It's a no-brainer, because if Pep Guardiola is available, you take him over Eddie Howe any day, because the City board aren't they're not interested in sentimentality based on nationality or anything else really. They're interested in cold hard facts, and the cold hard fact about Pep Guardiola is that he wins trophy and Eddie Howe hasn't done that yet in his career, and I don't think he's proven himself at a level to be interested, or not to be interested, but to be linked with a job like that yet.
Poor Eddie Howe, he's just been torn apart by Matt.
Don't get me wrong, I adore Eddie Howe. He's a very handsome man.
No, but I think you're exactly right. I mean, but I think you're exactly right. You're talking about clubs where, this isn't like they've got $40 on the line here. I mean, you're talking about a Man City where, there are billions of dollars that are sunk into that club. And the last thing that you're going to do is get a bunch of guys sitting in a boardroom go, you know what? Let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. If it goes up, so what? No, they want a sure thing. They want a big time return on their investment. And the best way to get that is, the world's talking about your club because you bring the biggest available manager in and you knock down trophies, and he's got it. It's linked. He's done it before, and you end up with the ROI. It's just they're just running a business at the end of the day.
I'm sick of it.
But here's the most important question about Manchester City from the weekend. What'd you think of the new badge?
It's lovely.
Didn't even see it.
Yes, you did. I showed it to you, Paul.
Oh no, I've seen the badge. I didn't see it on the shirt. I'm gonna have to find a picture of the game now. I missed some of the games. I literally saw the goals of, but I was kind of between two things. As you know, we were working on the website last night, so I was kind of watching out the corner of my eye. So, go on, Matt. What did you think of the badge?
I really liked it, but bear in mind the badge isn't on their shirts yet. The badge is was.
Oh, come on, Colin.
The badge was leaked by the Intellectual Property Office because they'd registered the trademark.
Ah, I did see that then.
That's what they've got. I think it's for next season, from the start of the following Premier League season. I believe that's when they're going to... It's very, very similar to the badge they had pre this one, really, with a sort of slightly more modern twist. But I personally think it's really, really nice.
Was it the one you showed, Colin, which we didn't like out of the options?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see, Matt, if when you Google, like, the new badge, so some of the options were... this is going to be a very visual... part of the show. Some of the options were quite nice, and we kind of didn't understand why they went for this, like, in my opinion, worse looking. Like, Matt, you can see them on my screen now. I quite like them.
I think that the one on the left particularly is very, very close to the NYCFC badge, which obviously is supposed to be modelled around Manchester City. And I think the other one on the right is almost too close to their existing badge in that it's almost like they've melted their existing badge and then put it on like a circle.
Nice, isn't it? Basically what we're showing you guys is imagine the NYCFC badge, but with the Man City bird kind of in the middle of it. It's basically all it was. But yeah, I mean, clubs changing badges, it happens, doesn't it? It's all about appeal. It's all about again, it's all about money, isn't it? I guess when you think about it, it's all about kind of getting money. Here's a question for you. I actually asked a Man City fan this yesterday. What were the stars for on the Man City badge?
That is a good question, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not particularly well versed in Manchester City's sort of history.
If it helps, he didn't know either.
Well, if a Manchester City fan doesn't know what it stands for, then we've got an icicle's chance in hell of me knowing what it stands for.
Well, they kind of been important because they've been removed.
So they weren't World Cup wins then?
Maybe they could have been. Hey, the town I come from, the next town from it, only 1.2 miles away from where I was born, they won the first ever World Cup. And if one of you two
from Brazil,
no,
Uruguay?
Brazil, no, the first ever World Cup didn't include nations; it included clubs. Go on, Google it and come back to me with the team before the end of this show. But Colin, I want to actually just go to you a second. There's been some more moving. It appears LA Galaxy don't want to have any players in their squad.
Well, I think what you're watching. So for people who aren't familiar with MLS or aren't, or who wonder what the point of the salary caps and things like that in there, if you follow what's going on with the LA Galaxy right now, you're effectively watching the salary cap and the parity in the league mechanic at work. So fundamentally, the Galaxy, after last year's explosion of bringing Dos Santos in, bringing Gerrard in, issuing a bunch of new contracts to a bunch of new players, exhausted all of their ability to pay down the salary caps to keep them competitive for a season, which the goal was string another championship together, and then kind of the team would have to break apart. Unfortunately, they didn't string that championship together, and now they have to disassemble the team. So yeah, I think last time we talked, Omar Gonzalez's transfer to Pachuca had gone through in Liga MX, and the big news a couple of days after was an absolutely critical part of their midfield, Juninho. He's now in Liga MX as well.
That was an absolute insane deal. I can't believe Gonzalez and Juninho basically in 7 days have left LA Galaxy. I mean,
part of it's driven by the timing. So the teams have very specific time windows to get the salary caps underneath the league maximum, so that they can successfully participate in like upcoming drafts and things like that. So the timing is plus, if you do it now, you also get the maximum amount of time, because the clubs in probably like mid-January or so are going to start preseason camps and things like that. So if they're going to make moves, they need to make them sort of sooner than later.
Right.
So there's been a lot of movement in MLS in December. There usually is, but yeah, LA has been by far. It is very much so the instantiation of the salary cap mechanic and work, keeping the league in parity.
Has there been any other big moves in the MLS that you want to mention this week?
I think most interesting, they confirmed Marco Papa moved from Seattle to Colorado. Houston's been on the move. Philadelphia has been fire sailing a bit. So, and then I think probably the biggest one, I think Chris Pontius is out of DC United, a longtime DC United servant, and he's in Philadelphia, I believe, if I remember correctly. A lot of homegrown talent coming into the league. I know Dallas is big for homegrown talent. My Red Bulls announced 2 more signings, so I think we now have a league-leading 7 academy players on the first-team roster for it. So, some interesting stuff. It should be an interesting year.
And no doubt, I think we've asked in the past, Matt, about your viewing of the MLS. But when you look and you're hearing that the LA Galaxy have basically sold and they've been forced to let go 2 of their best players, it's just insane news to be coming across.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I feel like that, like, as much as I think it very much keeps the league competitive, it also keeps the league uncompetitive, if that makes sense. Like, it makes the league itself competitive in between, as far as the teams are able to be competitive with each other, but the teams themselves on a continental stage are hamstrung by it, because no team can build themselves any kind of squad to really take on, it just wouldn't work. Imagine if we did that in the Premier League. Imagine if at the end of this year, Chelsea just randomly, let's not actually use Chelsea as a bad example, one of the top teams, wink wink,
nice.
Say at the end of the year, City were forced to, because of salary cap stuff and waivers and all kind of stuff, had to get rid of Yaya Toure, David Silva and Sergio Aguero just at random, and they had to give them to Stoke. Like, that would boggle the mind how that would happen. And yeah, I think we'd have a lot more different winners, but at the same time, I think that it would be very strange to watch.
I think one thing that definitely is a question I want to ask Colin is in terms of the media in the US. And what's the reports? Because as Matt says, it's kind of pulling teams back, and the fact that these two players have left the MLS now, surely that's getting a negative reaction. The fact that these players, these good, solid players, are actually leaving the MLS to go to Mexico.
Not really. So I think something you got to kind of realize is from baseball, football, big high-profile players moving around teams all the time is not all that newsworthy per se, because it happens a lot in our sport. The free agency concept and at the end of a season, teams that were that had very strong years with because of salary capping and things like that, ending up with lots of reshuffling in the leagues, isn't all that unusual. So that in and of itself doesn't really spark anything. It's been on the radar for a long time that LA wasn't going to be able to sustain what they were doing out there based on the structure for the league. So it's not really big newsworthy in that sense. Matt touched on what the big newsworthy point is, though, and it has to do with the continental level competition. So this year has been a huge push for our regional Champions League, so the CONCACAF Champions League, for MLS to really stake their foot in the ground and take on Liga MX and really beat Mexican teams, because the Liga MX teams are by far still better than the US teams. And when we get into February, March, when they play the knockout stages, it's all Mexico versus MLS teams in it. But to me, LA is one of those teams that's in there, and to me, this is now an enormous step backwards for that. So now you're running a team which we've got 4 in the knockouts, and MLS is really pinning its hope on nailing down a winner to this. Montreal had a phenomenal run last year, but couldn't pull it off. We had a lot of hopes pinned on LA being sort of the super team to start establishing a little bit of continental dominance, and now that's basically up in smoke. So, a DC, which you can argue Pontius leaving hasn't helped. We'll have to see what happens, in there. Seattle, Marco Papa is a great playmaker. He's not there anymore. Obafemi Martins is a good goal scorer, but you can make a pretty reasonable argument that Clint Dempsey's time is, the shadow may be falling on his career, and do you really have as much of the creativity and dynamicism, in that Seattle team playing there? So I think, and then going into the next cycle, Portland, Portland's probably an interesting one. New York, is New York really ready to compete with a Club America, who didn't show really well at the Club World Cup, but is a good team, or even some of the other teams in Mexico? I'm not sure, and I think some of the rules with the salary capping, while I think you're right, it keeps the league competitive within itself. We're not really able to take that big step forward continentally, and I think that's the next level of MLS, is really having to take that step forward in the continental competitions.
I think I almost feel bad for LA Galaxy that I honestly think this should be the turning point where they actually look and say, well, hang on, these two players have actually left the MLS. I know you're saying about you have baseball, football, basketball, where players move around clubs, but the fact that these players have actually left the MLS completely and gone to Mexico, it's basically just saying there's some of the best players in our league, you can have them because we putting restrictions on which are going to just destroy the teams. They're not going to win a continental competition as long as this is happening, because it's alright having the designated players and the big boys at the club, but if the rest of the team is very weak or very in the development stage, then it's just not going to work. I mean, I think that was apparent with New York. You had the big players in there, David Villa from the start, for example, but when the rest of the team seems weak, then you're going to struggle. There's been some news coming through which I've just seen on my Twitter feed, Colin, which is El Salvador's most capped footballer, Alfredo Pacheco.
Yeah, was killed in a gas station robbery, I think is what it was.
Yeah, that's quite sad news, and I assume he's somebody who you know a lot better than us.
Yeah, so he was a big, as you said, it was El Salvador. I'm not humongously familiar with them. El Salvador is a little bit. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm more familiar, but they've been only sort of recently, sort of really resurging and landing on the top. But I think this is the second in a couple of weeks. I think there was one in Honduras a couple of weeks ago, again, where a significant footballer was killed. So it's definitely sad news out of Central America. Definitely.
But we're going to hop back over to Europe. So as always, Colin, jump back in the plane. I just want to quickly touch on the Championship again. We have obviously Matt on supporting the Fulham. I mean, last time you were on, we spoke about what's kind of the hope for the rest of the season, Matt. And you were kind of unsure at the time. And I mean, I'm just looking now at the league table to see how Fulham are doing exactly, and you've got to scroll quite far down to find them. I mean, they're sitting in 18th place, so I mean, is the hope that you can start pushing them in? You're only 3 points from Bristol City in 22nd. That's the issue. Oh, it appears Matt's disappeared, Colin.
Oh, sorry, I'm back. Muted my mic.
Oh, he's back. He muted his mic again.
Yeah, basically, I feel like the last time I was on, we still had I don't know if we'd had Stuart Gray as a manager or as the coach yet, but Kit Simons had definitely left. But we were still in a reasonable position. I think we were probably about 12th or something, looking up rather than looking down. But now it feels like the rest of the season it's just a case of please, for the love of God, don't get relegated. Because if you actually look, yeah, okay, fair enough, our goal difference is nowhere near as bad as the teams around us.
You're scoring a lot.
But yeah, exactly. Look at that, 36 goals. In fact, scroll up a little bit, you'll find that very few teams in this league have actually scored more goals than Fulham. In fact, nobody has. We have the top scoring team in the entire division, and we are 18th in it. Because look, 41 goals conceded. They're playing like my Wimbledon team. Only worse.
And you've conceded the most in the league as well.
Exactly. We are the top scoring and top conceding team in the entire division, and that to me is just all kinds of wrong. I would happily sacrifice some of the goals we're scoring for not conceding as many. And the thing is, though, over the last 5 matches, as you can see, the draw, loss, whatever, we've not really been scoring that many goals either. So our goal difference was at one point positive, despite being relatively in poor form. But now it's going very badly. Unless Savicio Kanovic pulls off some miracles, we're only 3 points above the relegation zone. Teams below us are in much better form than we are. We've got 3 points from our last 5 games. We've not won in 8. We need some big turnaround, and we need it fast, because at the end of the day, I think this year will probably end up being yet another write-off. Then in the summer, they may or may not sign anyone, depending on if our transfer embargo gets extended or whatever. But I think next year, I don't know, it just feels like we're heading on a downward spiral. Probably find they'll just end up getting us relegated to the conference, sell the club off, and sell the land for redevelopment. Probably worth more.
Confidence.
Yeah, but there would definitely be something sad to see Fulham in a league, a League One Fulham.
Oh, it would be good for Football Manager. There you go.
There's your Football Manager 2017 save right there.
Second yellow card. Football Manager 2017. Rebuilding Fulham.
Can't rebuild Fulham again. I already did that.
Well, it's not our fault he collapsed again.
Well, no, they weren't even that collapsed at the time. But that was me being optimistic.
I mean, you're going to be lucky in terms of relegation, and it's embarrassing to say, but when you look, you've got Bolton who are down. I mean, they're not going to survive. Any Bolton fans who want to disagree, good luck. You have Charlton, who we have Finchy, who comes on our show, comes on to basically just vent a bit of frustration. Unfortunately, they're looking like they're probably going to go down as well. Sorry about that. He will message me.
Charlton is an interesting one. I was having lunch with a mate of mine on Monday, and he's a Charlton fan. And what he was saying is that Charlton actually started off the season in relatively good form, and apparently they sacked their manager when they were 9th in the league, and they've barely won a game since then, which seems outrageous to me. But Maybe that's just a case of them having one of those owners that just pulls the plug. Almost like a sort of more subtle version of the way Leeds have run in themselves lately, although Leeds actually have improved their form and fortunes as of late.
Well, I think on a match day, Dan Finch on Twitter, who I follow, and like I say, I've had him on the show a couple of times, basically due to me following him on Twitter, and his match day tweets are unbelievable. They are so funny. And it is literally, the owner is just dreadful. All the way through, it's what are we doing? Why is this guy? Who is this guy? Why have we signed a guy from the 12th division in Belgium?
But do you think it's because the owners are treating Charlton a bit like a lower league, almost like the way that English sides treat Belgian clubs? It's almost like Standard Liège have gone, right, we're going to give you some of your own medicine. How much is Charlton?
Well, it could have been. I know he doesn't own Standard now.
He did at the time, didn't he?
He did, yes. And I'm not too sure exactly how it all is now. I think from what I've understood from when Dan's come on, he basically the club's just screwed, and the chairman and people running it basically don't have a clue, is the nicest way to put it.
Sounds like Fulham.
Sounds like Newcastle. Don't worry, we'll join you soon.
I don't know, if you go down, we may still not be playing you.
Do you know what? I've said this before. If we go down, at least we'll have a few wins, and it'll cheer me up a bit.
Well, at least it might mean that you can trim some of the fat, and by that I mean you'd be able to get rid of players you'd have some relegation release clauses, no doubt, because it's Newcastle, and of course you do, and I think that would give you an excuse. But then again, were you ever expecting to go down before? I think now, when they came back up, they would have signed a lot of players over the past few years with relegation release clauses, because if it can happen once, it can happen again. And you'd like to think they would have put those contingencies in there, but whether they have or not, of course, is a totally different question. And that does imply some level of competency in upper management at Newcastle, so perhaps I'm being a little bit too generous with this.
You're being too generous.
I feel like if they did go down, you'd be able to get rid of some of those players. And it worked very well for you guys last time. You went down, you won the league at an absolute canter, came back up, and within 2 years, you were fucking 6th in the league. Yeah,
went well. But I mean, we'll end by doing a who would I keep and who would I get rid of. So, goalkeeper, Tim Krul, sell.
Rob Elliott's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, and also Darlow, when he comes back, I think should be our number one. Elliott's just been lucky. Give him time, he'll soon cock up.
Rob Elliott looks a little bit like... He looks like... He is your girlfriend's older brother. He is the archetypal girlfriend's older brother. That's what he looks like to me. I don't know why I think that, but...
I haven't thought about it that way.
Let me go through. Paul Dummett, the Welsh Geordie, send him back to Wales.
Really? Do you not think that he would thrive in the Championship?
On the bench? I think he would be awesome. Honestly, he is one of the worst players I think I've seen in Newcastle, and that says a lot, because we're going to move in the centre-back. Colaccini. Yeah, exactly. That's another. He is back. We recalled him from loan.
Oh, whoop-de-doo.
That's how bad things go. You have Colaccini, who, unfortunately, his time's come. He's just getting lost. He's like a lost dog. Whatever dog, a poodle, or whatever has that stupid hair. Then you have Mbemba. Mbemba. I wish we did have Mbemba still. Or whatever he was called. I don't know. We have loads of Mbembas and Mbiyas. But he looks about 90. Genuinely, I think his passport should be scanned again, so I think it's fake.
I've heard a lot of good things about him.
He's not bad, but there's no way he's 21.
Oh, yeah, but then, that's fair enough. Carnew's probably in his 90s.
It's just when you look at him, he literally he looks close to retirement age. That's why he looks so good. It's experience.
He played in the 1942 World Cup.
And then you've got Janmat, who's genuinely our best player.
Janmat got a lot of stick in his first season, did he not?
Yeah, just because he looked a bit weak.
But
and
he
also
really has stepped it up.
He reminds me of Colaccini, who did step it up, but then he's just past it now.
I think Colaccini can step it up for a bit.
For like the first half an hour.
Yeah, he's got a little bit in him. Like, clearly he's not a bad player in terms of he's got the experience, and he has been a good player for Newcastle. But as you say, definitely. I think that he's just starting to wane a bit now.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of like you've kept him one season too long, almost.
Yes, or two.
Or 10.
Going into midfield, you have Anita, who, bless his little soul, he runs around. He tries. It's just a shame he's shit. And then next to him you got Colback, who is literally just the Geordie who you've kind of gave a game to because you feel like you're obliged to do because he's from the local area. He got a contract to keep the fans happy that we've got a local in the team. Again, it's just a shame he's shit. Then you go further up, you got Sissoko, an absolute man mountain when he wants to play. He just wants to move to a bigger club. And then you go Wijnaldum, however you pronounce it. What a talent. But again, a shame that he only turns up once a fortnight.
All the games that are on telly.
Yes, if we're on telly, he'll do amazing. As soon as the games took off telly, he goes...
Someone needs to tell him that all the games are technically televised somewhere.
Yeah. And then we go to the final third, the attacking players. You've got Perez, who we signed as a hot prospect. And then we basically went, do you know what, we're really shit. Do you mind playing every single week? And he goes, but I've got no experience. We went, you'll be fine. Just score now and again and you'll be alright.
Jose Perez is that regen that you signed when they're like 16 years old and you go, right, he's going to be brilliant. He'll be one for the future. We could really nurse him through. And then you run out of money and you haven't got any strikers left and you go, right, in you go.
You've literally just nailed it. And then you've got Mitrovic, who...
the king of the red card.
He's an interesting one because people keep saying, he's still young, he shouldn't be playing. He's 21. At the age of 21, Wayne Rooney had played like 100 games or something. I'm sorry, but he's clearly got talent. He's clearly going to be a good player. He needs to be playing every single week. I don't want to hear this shit about bloody... like bring him through gently and stuff. He's 21. He's played in Serbia. He's played in Belgium. He's now playing in England. He's not just come off the fucking school bus. It pisses. I'm getting angry now. Every time McLaren comes out with his stupid hair and it starts going on, and it's like, it's just he comes out and he goes, yeah, well, he's still young. Shut up. But then this is the issue. If we want to nurse through Perez and Mitrovic, we've got to play Cisse. And this guy gives us all hope that we have careers in football. How? Just how? Serious, Colin, how does somebody so bad at the game of football end up at a Premier League club? He can't control a ball. He can't touch a ball. He can't pass a ball. Half of his shots he accidentally kicks into the back of the net.
Well, there you go. You just flip a coin and maybe you score. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's another one to me that seems to suffer from the, like, when I feel like playing, I can play, and when I don't feel like playing, like, I'm just going to wander around out on the field for, like, 90 minutes, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, I've argued this before, and I'll argue it again. The best goal he's ever scored, the goal he keeps showing against Chelsea, was a miss-hit. He basically got the ball and went, well, I can't dribble. He looked inside and went, well, I can't pass it. And he thought, screw this, I'm going for it. And he just swung his feet. The ball curled like he's never curled it before. It went in the back of the net. He looked shocked. The staff looked shocked. The crowd looked shocked. Everyone was shocked because he's so shit. It should never have happened.
I know what you mean. But at the same time, and I know this is going to come right out of left field, do you not think that sometimes if a player is scoring a lot of goals through a lot of luck, that maybe the luck is not actually luck at all, and perhaps there is actually something to it? He may not be finishing with huge aplomb, but perhaps I kind of like to look at it as, like, how babbling and incoherent does something have to be before it starts to sound like wisdom? And maybe he is like the footballing anthropomorphization of that.
Do you know what I think it is? I think somebody, when you hear in the newspaper that somebody's put a curse on a player in Africa to stop him being able to score.
A witch doctor.
Yep, somebody did that, but in the good side for Cisse, it worked for a while, but then basically the spirits just didn't have the power to continue to drag this useless player any further, and he literally just flopped. I know what you're saying, but if you watch him week in, week out, you'll see him set himself for that beautiful curler into the corner, top left corner, and it'll go in the bottom right corner straight to the keeper's hands. And it happens so many times. And even his goals, he seems to set himself at the opposite corner to where they go in. So I've lost all faith. I literally have no faith in Cisse, and that's the end of the show.
Wait, speaking of curling goals, before we leave, did you guys see the one from Southampton yesterday with Arsenal.
Oh, Martina.
Jesus,
Decent, wasn't it?
God, that was a curveball and a
was
half.
at that game, and he was sitting behind that goal, and he Snapchatted me right afterwards, and I just could not. Ridiculous goal. Like the amount of curl. It was Roberto Carlos. It was a banana shot, but he was saying to me. I was talking to him earlier, and he was saying that when they saw that Martina was actually on the starting 11, they immediately thought, "Oh, we're going to get absolutely handed," because apparently he's not exactly had a good season when he has played at the times for Southampton, and he's really turned out for the books. Because not only was he great with the strike, but he actually did a solid job defensively.
That was baseball level beautiful curveball. That was a gorgeous goal.
Cisse would have scored it. But yeah, the end of the show basically just ended with me just sulking about Cisse. It's justified. Try supporting Newcastle for just a few weeks, and then come back and listen to the show, and you'll understand all of my frustration. And plus, you'll come back with your own. But yeah, I want to thank Matt for coming on.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
It's always fun.
I'm going to play you out now with our lovely outro, which, as always, I forgot to edit, which means I will continue to talk until the sound actually kicks in, which might happen soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Touchline, a Football Manager Central podcast with your hosts, Paul, Ryan, and Colin. We'll catch you next time.